My name is David Reed. You're watching Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. Ken Rabehl was an illustrator on the first seasons of Stargate SG-1. And he created so much of the iconic designs that we are so accustomed to seeing with a pencil. He went on to work on Battlestar Galactica with Richard Hugh Dolan, Eureka, Arrow, and his work speaks across time. In this episode, you're going to see a lot of that imagery. I had completely forgotten that when I was at PropWorks in 2010 and 2011, I had interviewed Ken for this book. This is the first of two books, Stargate Artifacts, which were the they were catalogs for what we were selling in the auction. Full color photographs from everything from props, costumes, set pieces, and yes, some of Ken's artwork. And I was going through this, and in the front of it, I found, among other interviews that I did, one with Ken. And I was like, well, it's a shame I don't have the audio for it. And then I went looking, and I found it. 15 minutes of a phone conversation I had with him in 2010, 8 years before we lost him to ALS. So I've been hanging on to this one for a few months now, waiting for the right time to release it, organizing his collection of art, and we're going to do that in this episode. Yes, it is only 15 minutes, but it is packed with information, and I'm thrilled to be able to present it to you. In addition, Richard Hugh Dolan, Bridget McGuire, and Douglas MacLean, whom we rounded up last December for Dial the Gates and Gate World, will share their thoughts and their feelings on Ken's work and discuss their friend at the end. So after you hear from Ken, you will hear from the three of them talking about what it was like to work with the man in the office, the good and the not so good artists. Just extraordinary, and you will hear a couple of those stories. He designed, among many things, the Touchstone, which is one of my absolute favorite pieces from all of the content that he created. And I'm hoping to get this full size one day and in the color scheme. Martin McLean did an excellent job with this. The artists inspire so many people on the show, and they also inspire us as fans. So let's hear what Ken Rabehl has to say as he talks to us across time.
Tell us about your background and how you became involved in the show.
Working in the film business now for about over 20 years. And I first started out on a movie called Star Voyager for Disney. That was my very first film. And then I got onto the TV series MacGyver back in the 80s, late 80s. And then I was working on that for a couple of years. And then I just kind of, I met Richard Hugh Dolan, a production designer, on a show called Little Women. I think I knew him before that, but I can't remember how far back. And he was production designer for Stargate, and he and I got along really well. And he hired me to come on to Stargate. And then, I worked there as an illustrator for a couple of years, and it was very good. And that's how I started out there.
We're talking with Richard later today. I've been looking. He's a pretty cool dude.
He is one. I got to tell you something about Richard. He's probably the best production designer in Vancouver right now.
Wow.
I can tell you that right now easily. He is really good he's a really good people person. He's a really good production designer. He knows how to utilize the people in his department, gives them freedom, and he gets what he wants because he gives people plenty of latitude, and he's really good to deal with. So No, I got nothing but high praise for Richard Hugh.
You say you've worked on MacGyver and some Disney stuff. Stargate obviously is very sci-fi oriented, even though it's like in the here and now. What did that show allow you to do that MacGyver couldn't, and other modern day based shows?
Well, MacGyver was very contemporary, right? I mean, we did some high-tech sort of stuff because, he was a spy or whatever I can't remember. He was working for an agency. And we did some high-tech stuff, but on Stargate, the whole world was high-tech, so, or very futuristic, so we could, I guess as we were going to different planets. I mean, it was still contemporary, but we were going to different planets, so we were recreating alien worlds, and we couldn't do that on MacGyver. And to me, that's pretty fun because it takes you away from the sort of the standard lines of what humans consider to be technology and humans consider to be the latest sort of technology, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it was just that whole idea of going through stargates to different planets and recreating on those planets something new that was another thing about it, is that we were creating something new every time we went to another planet. It wouldn't be always the same existing world. So that made it interesting and fresh all the time, So I found myself, designing and drawing all sorts of different things, and it went from the primitive, sticks and stones and grass huts, and to castles, to high tech sort of installations and things like that.
I think that's why Stargate is still on right now. I mean, 16 seasons going strong is because the tapestry is so huge.
Well, the franchise has a very popular theme to it. It really works. And I think people relate to it quite a bit. And when they switched over to Stargate Universe, I think that was just the next step for them, because they might have sort of exhausted a lot of the ideas for just ordinary Stargate. And the Universe was the next step, I think, for them. And, it's been a very popular show. And it went strong for a long time.
Ken, was it ever daunting creating a new world every single week? Did you just at some point go, what can I possibly design now? We've done it already.
No, not really, because, I found that I would read the scripts and have my discussion with Richard and the art director, and I found that things sort of spontaneously generated from those discussions and from the reading of the script. I mean, I get impressions right away from scripts. Like, I get images almost immediately about where I would where I think it could go, and then I take the production designer's ideas and and go with where he wants to go, and align my thoughts with his thoughts, and so we come up with a product. But I never really found myself stumped. Not really. There always seemed to. The only thing that was a problem is because it's episodic television.
Yes.
And there's budgetary constraints, so sometimes I would be drawing stuff where, art director would say to the production, and say, well, no, we really can't go there. Or construction would say, no, that's not going to be possible in the money and time that we have. So, I found that a little bit frustrating sometimes.
Looking at the concept art, I've seen some of your stuff, and, it's clear when you see those designs on paper, even 12 years after that episode is aired, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, it would have been so much more awesome had they went with Ken's original design for this. But you're right, for budgetary constraints, you can't always do everything that's up in your head.
No, you can't, because your mind can design something for a particular item that would cost millions of dollars when the price tag that they have may only be $100,000. So you have to cut and splice your original idea down to something that's going to be workable, because the mind has no budget limit. It can do whatever it wants. But I would have to continually sort of break down my ideas to fit within the budget and try to keep some of the flavor of the original idea.
Keep something of it intact.
Well, keep something of it. Yeah, just keep the flavor where it was, and that usually worked. That usually worked fine with everybody, and and Richard's a great designer. His ideas. Richard really knows how to take ideas that are really big and expensive, break them down into ideas that are doable, but still still attractive and still desirable to people.
Yeah.
He's very good at that. I can to a certain extent, but I have a sort of a rich sort of outlook on ideas. So sometimes, with Richard's with help, we would break ideas down to stuff that would really work. So
it's like, Ken, I know you want to do that, but you got to come down.
It's exactly right.
What were some of the things that you I know it's a number of years now, but what were some of the things that you designed from the show that you're most proud of, that stick out in your mind?
Well, some of the things that come to mind are like, I'm really it's kind of a small thing, but it's something that ended up being used throughout the show, and that was what was it called? The gate.
The GDO?
Dial home device. The dial home
DHD.
Device. Yes.
Wow.
That was my design, and I'm quite proud of that. And I can't think of all the other things, but there was many things. I did a totem one time, a totem pole that for a race of people that were mining a kind of a silver metal.
Spirits,
and,
the Salish.
Yeah, the Salish. And so I did a kind of a neat totem pole for them, and I can also remember this needle device I designed that sort of jabs needles into the side of your head. That was quite interesting. That was an example where I got too intricate with the design, and we ended up having to break it down quite a bit because it was like a $2 or $3 million design that I did when it really couldn't be. So
yeah,
that got broken down.
I think that was the season 2 finale with the memory device for Out of Mind.
That's right. Yeah, it was.
Man, oh man, the DHD. It's not in the feature film. So how did you come up with that design? I mean, did you look at the Stargate and then just have to think, okay, what would be the perfect offshoot of this that's still clearly the same piece of technology?
Well, I think what happened was it was looking at the Stargate, mostly looking at the sort of the design of the symbols and sort of the lines in the metal of the Stargate and how that represented the type of material it was, and incorporating those into a design. Now, the design itself, it was just a number of sketches, just doing one sketch after another until I got something that I was comfortable with and that Richard was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recall it being heavily influenced by any particular thing. I think that I might have looked at some architectural references, but ultimately it was just sketching. Sketching ideas and seeing what worked. Also, the fact that it has 2 prongs on the front of it,
yes,
sticking out. I think I was influenced or inspired by the Horus symbol or one of the Egyptian. I remember an Egyptian symbol, but I can't remember the name of it. And I think that those 2 prongs were influenced by that.
Hathor's symbol of the bull or the cow. It has those prongs.
That's okay. That was it. Yeah, that's what I think was that was the major influence in that design.
I'll be darned.
Was looking at that. So yeah, so that's how that came about.
Very cool. I can't imagine designing that. I mean, you don't want to make it a phone. I mean, but you have to make it because I'm sure you were aware at this point that this thing was going to be carted all over Vancouver. For all these shows.
And also it had to be a good design and a long-lasting one because it was going to be throughout the show.
Yeah.
So there was emphasis put on the design on this thing because it really had to look like something for a long time because people were going to be looking at it all the time.
Yeah.
So it was something that needed to be portable and carted around and all that kind of thing.
How did the show allow you to grow as an artist?
Well, I think when I first started on Stargate, I was not as technically proficient. Well, I sort of was. I was pretty good at perspective and that kind of thing. But I think that doing the kinds of designs we did really sort of pushed my ability to sort of look at ideas that I'd never looked at before and conceptualize them. Because we had done so much of that, I think I became much better at that than I was before I started the show. And what I mean by that is to properly conceptualize an idea in its full, rich detail, and be able to execute that on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time we were doing everything vellum. Of course, now I do all my paintings. I do all color paintings in the computer. I use Corel Painter. So I paint all my work now. But back then we were doing everything in pencil. So that's another thing. I learned a lot about pencil shading, and as well as design. Learning how to really utilize pencil really well for getting the most out of a drawing.
Yeah, a lot of these artists now, young kids, I worked at the video game, the Stargate Worlds video game, for a number of years before it crashed. And, they all know how to just work in the computer. They don't necessarily know how to, a lot of them did, but some of them didn't know how to put pencil to paper. And I really think that's where it starts. You have to, it's good to have that core skill set.
Yeah, you got a lot of 3D. You got a lot of kids out there doing 3D, and they're very good at that. But you're right. None of them can. Not very many of them can draw on paper and quickly conceive of an idea. Like I would even I don't know a lot of 3D. I know a little bit of SketchUp, but it would seem to me that you need to sort of sketch something out to show your boss, your creative director, or production designer, whoever, before you start making a 3D model. You need to be able to communicate quickly ideas on paper, and that's how I communicate. I mean, I can come up with a sketch in minutes. I mean, to convey the idea that I want to convey, and I think that's something that a lot of these artists are going to studios where they learn a lot of schools, but these schools don't teach drawing skills. They take you right into to doing the software.
Yeah.
And there isn't that stage where you draw or anything like that, because they're just simply not learning that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not where the money is right now. That's one of the disappointing things to me. I mean, I know that the computer allows people to share information better, and the software like Corel, allows those ideas to come out quicker and more efficiently, and you're not wasting trees. But how do you feel about not having? We're so lucky to have so much of the early concept art from Stargate being original pencil drawn sketches. You just don't find that anymore on shows. It's really
no, you don't. It's sort of, we all were kind of doing that years ago. I mean, you mean say 10 years ago you could find all the shows sort of doing pencil drawings, but it all disappeared now, and everybody shifted over to. Art departments want you to have 3D skills, and people are painting in Photoshop, and a lot of what's happening is a big trend I've noticed in art, in film, and it's a striking trend, is the shift from even painting concepts, like whether you're painting in the computer or painting it by hand, is the shift over to photoshopping photographic elements together to make the painting look as real as possible.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and that's where the big features, what they want. They want you to do photo composition now and make it look as real as possible. So that kind of, I'm finding that out with a lot of, I mean, I've done it myself. I mean, I don't enjoy it as much because it's not as much fun to look for photographs and cut and splice and pieces together.
Yeah.
But that is the trend, and nobody pencil sketches anymore. It is too bad, really, because you're right. Pencil sketches are a lost art form. They really are. They're beautiful in their own sense.
Ken
had a different
such
process.
an amazing talent for just he just sees stuff in his head, and it would be on paper.
He in the later years with us, but also he was working on a computer.
He was starting to get there because everyone had to.
He did, but it was always like his work always started by hand.
Yeah.
And then he would take that into the computer, do Photoshop work with it, but it always started.
Yeah.
Everything he did started as a pencil sketch or a pencil perspective. He had this system of working up perspectives, which it would take up like half of the art department with his lines and stuff like that. And he was really obsessive about his art. Like it was like my frustration as the art director was to get it off his desk and hand it off to the person who needed it. And he was just like, no, I'm not. I'm just. And you look, and he's like shading the stars, and you're like, okay, that's enough shading on the stars. I think we can hand this off to the visual effects people now. And he's just like, I'm not done yet. just not done.
Bridget, I remember I had a flight booked to fly to LA to make a presentation to the executives at the studio. I could have been a presentation for Battlestar, I'm not sure. So anyway, and there's Ken finishing off one of our concept drawings. And Tech Talk, the limo's going to pick me up, Ken. If I'm not on that flight, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to kill you. And he kept at it and at it. And I said, Ken, I'm going to rip that goddamn thing right off of your table. I want it now. The limo was outside, motors running, and he's still trying to fill it. And I'm going, you don't understand, Ken.
The amazing thing is, though, he could also do the most amazing sketches about this big.
Yeah.
In seconds.
Yeah.
Literally, he would be, I remember him going on a bus, or it could have been a limo to the airport with a director and a script.
Yeah.
And they would be storyboarding a sequence. And on the script page, he would draw these little squares about this big, and they would talk. Director said, I'm going to do this kind of shot over here, we're going to push you to do this. Ken would scribble and do this, and then he would come back to the art department.
Storyboard.
And then he would storyboard it. But it's like his little sketches were the best. It was sort of like, Ken, blow them up, print them 8 by 10, send them out. You don't need to do any more. He would then work them because
he really did. I talked, like, towards the end of his life there, we talked about it, and he really said that when I say he was obsessive, it really was, he just had to do, he would picture what he wanted, the picture would be in his head, and he had to keep working on it until what he had in his head was what he saw on the page. And if they didn't match up, he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy to let it go.
The people that he kind of modeled himself after, and I think he even went to LA and
he met Sydney. Another great
Sydney,
illustrator for you guys.
but also Ralph McQuarrie,
Yes.
who did a lot of the Star Wars stuff. And you could see that that's what Ken was looking for, because he went down there, talked to the guys, saw their work, and went, that's what I want to do. So that's what he wanted.
That's what
so
he
that
did.
and that's what he did.
Yeah.
It's because when you got a finished sketch from Ken, whether it was pencil sketches were really nice. His finished paintings, when he got to paint, which wasn't often enough, were stunning. Mm-hmm. And then to me, his tiny little thumbnails. And I would kill to be able to do that, because it was just, wow, you've got the whole thing there.
I ruined his hands, I think, because I asked him to do original paintings. It was for an Afghan series of paintings or whatever. And ever after that, he always had to wear support on his hands.
That was the beginning of the ALS.
Was that the beginning of the ALS?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
those were the first symptoms.
Yeah.
And he put it off to his shoulders or strain or whatever.
Yeah.
But he developed ALS, and it affected his unfortunately his shoulders first.
Yeah.
So that was
ultimately all musculature.
Yeah.
Those are probably his last paintings that he ever did.
They were, yes.
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hope that they're around somewhere.
Well, Gary York had ALS too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah.
How do you feel?
Lucky to be here.
It's a black humor.
I haven't hit any of those yet.
Yeah.